Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Jennifer McGuire, and I'm thankful you're here today. So I have a very long video for you again today. I figure since we're stuck at home, we might as well find something to do that we enjoy. Now, I will say that I filmed this video quite a while ago, and I've kind of been holding on to it. This one was so much fun to make because I did a bunch of cards, all showing ways to do alcohol inks with the new alcohol ink alloys. So we'll start by making a bunch of backgrounds, then we'll start making a bunch of cards. So I'm thinking that even if you're not into alcohol inks, you'll probably find a tip or two that's helpful since we're making so many different designs. Also, before we get started, I wanted to mention that Tim Holtz recently did an excellent video that's very long with lots of ideas for using these products. I'll link to that below if you want to check that out. He's brilliant. Okay, so first of all, I'll be focusing on the new colors of alcohol inks. I've recently used these in a video, and I will link to it here on the top right if you missed it. These new 15 colors are very vibrant, which I really like, but you could definitely use any of the older colors too for the techniques that I share. Here's a look at the new colors. We have the Glacier, which is a beautiful blue, Rosewood, which is very bold, Gumball, Laguna, which you'll see me use a lot, Sienna, Mojito, Everglades, Monsoon, which is another great one, Ember, and then we have Dijon, Cobalt, Moss, Vineyard, Boysenberry, and Fiesta. In addition to these new colors of alcohol inks, I will be using the new Ranger Tim Holtz alcohol ink alloys. These alloys are very concentrated, intense metallic alcohol ink. They are different than the metallic mixatives, which I've used in the past, and I will show you a side-by-side comparison a little bit later in this video. With these alloys, you get kind of a leafing look. The metallic kind of breaks away and groups together, so you get like these little chunks of metallic in your backgrounds. And I will talk more about this as we go. Now, the different colors that are available are Foundry, which is like a champagne-y color. Then we have Sterling, which is a nice silver. Then we have Gilded, which happens to be my favorite for getting cool techniques or getting cool looks on your background. Then we have Statue. And then the final one is kind of a rose gold, and this one is called Mind. Now, I just put some here just so you could kind of see the color. I'm going to kind of blow it here with my air blower just so you can see what it kind of spreads out to do. But remember, you want to use these with other alcohol inks and alcohol blending solution. I just wanted you to see the colors here. Before we start using these and talking more about them, let's talk about the other things I'll use in this video. I am using Tim Holtz Yupo paper. I like the heavyweight. It now comes in two sizes. I get the smaller size and cut it in half for a lot of my smaller backgrounds or keep it the full size. I also have rubbing alcohol and a little pipette, which allows me to put drops onto my Yupo paper. It's a really handy, inexpensive tool. I also have Tim Holtz alcohol blending solution. These two move colors around on your Yupo paper a little bit differently, which you'll see as we start creating. I'm also working on my Tim Holtz glass media mat. I love this media mat. It's a glass surface that I use in all of my videos, and it's really easy to clean up alcohol inks from it. And then we have our alcohol ink air blower. I had tried many different blowers in the past, and this one is by far the best and very helpful in moving color around and controlling a little bit more where it goes. Now, keep in mind that all of these products today, you want to use great care when using them, and check out the manufacturer's website for more information on that. Okay, let's dive into making a bunch of backgrounds, and we'll use alloys on each of these. I'm going for a more kind of wispy look today where I don't cover the entire background, but you can use these along with any of your alcohol ink background techniques. So here I'm taking up some rubbing alcohol and I'm putting some drops onto a piece of Yupo paper. Now I'm adding a few drops of color. Now you can put as much color down as you want. You could use any color combinations you want, and I have a lot of examples to show that. I will be putting the particular colors of alcohol inks that I use up in the top left corner throughout, so you can always check that. Okay, so now I have just the rubbing alcohol and some of the colorful alcohol ink, and I'm using my air blower to move that color around. Now I'm going to add an alloy. This is Mind, and I only used a little bit. A little bit goes a long way with this. You can see how the alloy kind of stays together. It moves, but kind of moves together. It doesn't become like blended into the background and disperse. It's designed to kind of break away and group. You can see how it's moving together there. So if you think about the social distancing thing here, alloys are breaking that rule. As you move them around, they kind of group up and create those amazing metallic clusters. I am adding a few drops of alcohol blending solution here and there just to kind of get the color moving around and lighten and blend. Now check this out. When it dries, look at the cool result. You can see that bit of mind there in the middle. Remember, I only put one drop in the middle, and you can see how you have these little clusters of gold metallic. It's just beautiful. Okay, next background. I like to do kind of a diagonal line of the isopropyl alcohol along the background of my U-boat paper, and then add my alcohol ink on top of that. I then move the alcohol ink around, and then I come in with the alloy. By the way, you want to make sure that you shake the alloys very well before you use it. You can hear the little ball in there that shakes back and forth. You want to make sure you can hear that. Now this is Foundry, which seems to be kind of like a mix of a silver and gold. And I put quite a bit of it down on this background. So we're going to have a lot of metallic shine here. You can see as I move this around with my air blower, how the metallic moves. See how it's moving, but then it all wants to move back together to kind of create a cluster. So we got clusters of this metallic look all over the background. Now check out how magical that is. Watch that color move and the sparkle. It's mesmerizing. It's so much fun to watch. Okay, so after I'm happy with it, I like to just let mine air dry. It's still pretty wet here, but I like to let it air dry. You can kind of heat set it or dry it on your own if you want. And this is the result I get. Now I used a lot of the alloy on this. So you can see how some of the silver is spread around, but then you also have like the chunks along the edge of the gold. That's something cool that the Foundry color does. Okay, another one, I put my alcohol down. Now I'm putting my colored alcohol inks. So I have Boysenberry and Fiesta here, and I'm going to move that color around. Remember, you can do the whole background. I'm just kind of doing a diagonal wispy look for these examples. This time I put 2 drops of sterling, 2 small drops, and then right onto the drops of the alloy, the sterling alloy, I like to put a drop of the blending solution that just helps to kind of make it move around. So just watch, if you leave it alone, it moves on its own, but you can kind of control the movement by using the air blower. You can do a little bit of movement or a lot that way. Okay, so after I'm happy with the results on this one and I let it dry, you can see the silver metallic look that you get. And again, the silver pulls together and you get these areas of shine. Okay, next example. Now this one is my favorite of all the backgrounds. I started with the rubbing alcohol, and then I used Boysenberry, Laguna, and Gilded. Gilded is the gold alloy, and I think it's the best of all of them. It really has a cool reaction when you use it. So I put down the drops of the alloy, and on top of those drops of alloy, I put a drop of blending solution. And watch how the gold moves. You can see it's almost like it's drawn to each other, so you get those little clusters of shine. If you're working on your background and you like where it is, like if you're really happy with the results at a particular moment, you can try to freeze it by carefully heating it with a heat gun or a dryer, a hair dryer or whatever. And you can see how I move mine around pretty quickly and I'm holding the gun pretty far away, but that kind of freezes it. It stops the movement. Okay, so after I let this dry, check out the results. It's fun to mix colors that you normally wouldn't mix together. And there you can see how the gold kind of clusters and makes areas of shine on the background. Okay, with my next example, I'm following the same process of starting with the rubbing alcohol, the colors of alcohol ink, then the alloy, just a little bit, and then blending solution on top of the alloy, and then continue to move the color around as I want. Now, I will say there are many ways to use alcohol inks on backgrounds, and I've done many videos. I'll link to my playlist here. You can use any of those background techniques with the alloys. This just happens to be the order of putting down the product on the background that worked for me for the type of backgrounds that I wanted to do for today's video. So I encourage you to experiment and play. With these lighter colors, you can really see that alloy move around and then create little clusters of gold here and there on the project. Now, I know folks will probably ask about the color rubbing off or the alloy. I didn't notice any problems with it, but if you want to, you could always spray this with a fixative, and I'll link to the one that I often use below. This next background is going to be a bigger one, and I used the 3 different greens, the Mojito, Moss, and Everglades. I then put Foundry on that. That's the alloy. This alloy, the Foundry, it's almost like the silver in it moves around and the gold clusters a little bit more, which I think gives really fun results. So here you can see I'm moving it around with the air blower, and then I kind of freeze it in place by drying it. But then I set it aside to dry on its own completely, and there you can see all the shine. It really is more impressive in real life. It's harder to see with the lighting on my video, but you can see those clusters of gold color that collect kind of along the edges of wherever there is alcohol ink on the project. I also wanted to demonstrate that it's fun to do this technique with one color of alcohol ink. So here I used Monsoon, which is a beautiful color. Then I used quite a bit of the Foundry alloy. I did the blending solution on top, and now I'm just moving that color around, and you can see how the metallic pulls together and then the blue color kind of spreads around. And this was created with only one color of alcohol ink. So you can create some beautiful backgrounds without many different colors even. Here's another one that I tried that I didn't think I would like, but I ended up loving in the end. It's the Dijon, which is a yellowy color with quite a bit of the gilded gold alloy. So I put down some drops of the Dijon on top of my rubbing alcohol, drops of the gilded gold alloy, and then drops of the blending solution. And watch as I move that around. The yellow and the gold work so well together, and you can see the gold pulling towards the edges to create that kind of flaking or leafing look. Now off screen, I made a bunch of these backgrounds. I just love to make a lot at once, and then I can turn all of them into cards as soon as they're dry. Here's one that I created using some of the Ember, and I think I used a little Gumball, and then lots of the gold gilded alloy. And you can see the gold that kind of pulls together along the edges. Here we have Everglades and Cobalt along with the statue color of alloy. And I love the little bits of flake that we have here and there. Now, a really bold one is this pink one. This one I used Fiesta and Gumball with the gilded, and check that out. That's a great example of just using one kind of color palette along with the gilded so that you can really see that gold shine in action. Let me hold this up close to the camera. Look at the edge of the color. See that gold along the edge? It's such a cool effect. Okay, before we start making cards, let me do a comparison between the mixatives that have been out for a while and the alloys. On the left, we have the alloy, which is the new product. On the right, we have the mixative, which has been out for quite some time and does act a little bit different, even though it is metallic. So I'm putting rubbing alcohol on both of my pieces of Yupo paper here. I will then add the same colors to both, just so we can kind of get a side-by-side comparison. So as we've been seeing in this video, the alloy is designed to kind of break away and cluster into different areas on your background, creating that leafing look. The mixative is designed to blend more with your alcohol inks and kind of create a shimmery background, I guess I would say. You'll see a comparison here. So I added gilded onto both. You can see how the alloy the metallic is pulling together to create those cool looks, whereas with the mixative, the gold is spreading in with the color, so you get more of a shine along the entire background. I find the look of the alloy to be a little more impactful, but it definitely is up to you for what kind of look that you're going for. So I let these dry. On the left here, I'll go ahead and hold it up closer to the camera. We have the alloy version. You can see those areas where the gold has pulled together and you have the bright color around it. Now for the mixative version, you'll be able to see that the gold has kind of spread throughout the entire background, so you have the shimmer throughout. So basically the alloy pulls together, whereas the mixative kind of floats throughout. Okay, now that we have lots of backgrounds created, it's time to make a boatload of cards. What I like to do when I have a bunch of backgrounds is dig through my containers of products that I've been really wanting to use. I keep those kind of separate on my desk. And I dig through them and I decide if any of those would work well with the backgrounds that I've made. I'm looking for wonderful dies mostly, some background stamps, and a few sentiments. So dig through what you have and see what you could use with whatever backgrounds you create. I have a variety of different products today, so hopefully something will inspire you with what you have. My first few examples show how you can use simple white die cuts along with your colorful background. This allows the focus to stay on your color. So we have the Poppy Stamps Adriana Oval Frame Die. This is such a beautiful frame die. I die cut it from white cardstock. Now I'm going to hold that white die cut around the area that I want to highlight. Notice this is a big enough background that I can actually create multiple cards from it. Once I have the area identified that I want to focus on, I'm going to trace around that oval so I know exactly where to cut from and I can use all that leftover space for another card. I do keep all of my scraps from these because I can die cut from them and do a lot of other creative techniques to create scrap cards, and I'll link to a video that shows how I do that. Notice when I cut out that alcohol ink oval, I cut a little bit outside of the pen line so that there would be a little overhang so that I could glue it on the back of my die cut oval. So I used Gina K Connect liquid adhesive. You could use any strong liquid adhesive there to glue the alcohol ink piece to the back of my frame. By the way, this white die cut frame isn't just one white die cut. I die cut it 3 times and glued them together for a stacked dimensional look. That way, when it's against my white note card background, it will stand out more. If you only do 1 layer of die cut, it won't stand out as much. Adding that dimension creates those shadows, which allow it to stand out more. This is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding white note card, and I put something heavy on it while it dries. For the sentiment, I used the older Hero Arts A Bit of Kindness die. I again die cut that 3 times and glued it together and added it right to the center. In the background, you can see those little clusters of gold leafing that we created with the alloy. I like how using just a die cut frame and a die cut sentiment in white makes that alcohol ink stand out. Here's another card that features an alcohol ink background and some die cutting. Now for this one, I used that yellow and gold background, and I matted it with gold cardstock, which draws out the gold in the background. I then added a white die cut flower and a hug sentiment on top. Now the hug sentiment, I did the shadow in white and the word hugs in gold cardstock. This die is the Birch Press Hugs Honey Script die set, and I'll be using a few of these throughout this video. Now that flower is from a Simon Says Stamp Cosmo Flower die set. Now notice on the die there's only 1 leaf, and I wanted some more leaves towards the bottom of the flower. So I used the frame die from the last example and die cut that from white cardstock and cut off a few of the little leaves and added it onto the flower on my card. So look at your frame dies. Sometimes you can cut portions off to create different looks on different cards. Okay, let's talk about stamping on our alcohol ink backgrounds. There are many techniques that you can do for this, and I'm going to share a little bit here. So for this one, I'm using my Misty stamping tool. You could definitely use an acrylic block or just lay your background stamp onto your work surface and stamp that way. What I'm doing is I'm putting the Simon Says Stamp UR stamp into my Misty. Then I have my background that I'm lining up to make sure it's straight with the background stamp. There's a little adhesive on the back of my background and I can flip it over, and now it's glued temporarily into my Misty, lined up perfectly with the background stamp. For this, I'm using Ranger Archival ink. This ink works great on these backgrounds. I'm inking up a portion of the stamp with Pebble Beach ink, which is like a grayish brown, and then I'm going to wipe the stamp clean. Now I'm going to put a little bit more kind of towards that bottom corner. I'm inking it up, using a cloth to dab away some so I have a smooth edge to it, and then stamp that. So instead of stamping on the entire background, I just stamped towards the corners where the white is. I did overlap a little bit with the alcohol ink on those corners, but not much. Now I'm going to go ahead and heat set this so that the ink dries, and we'll end up with a little bit of stamping detail on our background. Now to create this into a card, I used the Waffle Flower Oversized Love You die. I die cut that 3 times from white cardstock, glued the die cuts together, and added it right onto our alcohol ink background. I matted that on some plum cardstock and put it on a Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock note card. So that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I like the Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock because it's a light gray and works really nice with these bold colors. Now notice where my stamping overlapped the alcohol ink. See how it kind of reacted there, and you can kind of see it? Stay tuned for more on that. I'll show you more about that technique. But here, this just shows you that you can add some stamping with permanent ink towards the edges of your open area, the white space of your card. And by the way, I did stamp on the envelope flap, so it matched perfectly. All right, another card example, a little bit similar, and I wanted to show you another trick with this one. This time I'm using the Ranger Archival Sea Glass color, and you can see I inked up the background and then dabbed the ink away from the middle area so that the ink really only goes on the white areas and overlaps the alcohol ink just a little bit. Again, I'm going to heat set this because I don't want it to smear. Yupo paper is pretty slick, so the ink will easily smear if you don't dry it first. Now I wanted to mat this with gold cardstock, but gold cardstock is more expensive than others, so I decided to use the leftover where I die cut the word hello from, and I use that on my matted background. Nobody will ever know that that die cut area is behind our alcohol ink background. So this is a nice trick with any cardstock really, and I do it a lot, but I don't often show it in videos, but I especially do it with specialty cardstocks like this one. So there it looks like a perfect gold mat, but when you flip it over, no one would ever know hello was die cut from it. So here's my completed card. I put that piece onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. Now the hello gold die cut is glued on top of 2 white die cuts, so it stands up nicely. I also added a Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip. Those are such a quick and easy way to add a little sentiment on your card. When you look closely at this, you can see how the gold has kind of built up on the outer edges of that background of the alcohol ink. Really gives a good look at what the alloys can do. I also think these last 2 cards show how powerful a large die cut sentiment is on a background. You really could put it on any background and make a quick card. Okay, here's another example where I did stamping over my alcohol ink, but we're going to step it up a little bit here by doing some lifting. I have the Pinkfresh Studio Enchanted Blooms background stamp, which I've used in videos before. I have a little alcohol ink background that I'm going to temporarily adhere into my Misty, and I'm stamping with pale ochre ink. This is another Ranger Archival ink. I'm inking up the background stamp completely and then stamping on top. Now next I'm going to take a microfiber cloth and I'm just pressing against the area where there's alcohol ink. And I'm lifting that color away, and watch when I lift the ink away, I'm actually lifting some of the alcohol ink color too. So all of a sudden you get this ghost-like image over the alcohol ink area. This is a fantastic trick that you can do with the Ranger Archival inks. So you see the yellow stamping on the white area, then over the alcohol ink area, it's like a ghost-like stamping. You can also use the Ranger Alcohol Ink Lift ink pad for this, and I'll link to a video showing more of that. This is just another way that you can incorporate stamping into your alcohol ink background. To finish this card, I added a gold frame heart from the Concord and 9th Quilted Heart die set, and I filled it with a piece of vellum. On the vellum, I white heat embossed Love You, and on top I put a hello stacked white die cut. Now notice my alcohol ink background. I die cut that with the Memory Box Matinee rectangle die. So it gives that fun rectangle die cut look with faux stitching on the inside edge. I put this onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch craft cardstock note card, and I stamped that same Pinkfresh Studio background stamp with white pigment ink on the background. So it matches nicely with the stamping that's on our alcohol ink background. I chose a very light ink for that stamping on the Yupo paper, so it's very subtle, but you can see the lifted color away from the alcohol ink area and the yellow stamping around it. Now for the Love You sentiment, I use this Birch Press You Are Awesome stamp set, which I'll be using a few times throughout this video. I really like the style of these sentiments and that you can build up many messages. I'm also using throughout this video the Birch Press Honey Script dies. Now these are sold in individual words along with the shadow, but we have hugs, thanks, hello, and blessed. I used hugs earlier, and on this card I used hello. I like the style of these and also that they include the shadow. And the sentiment is a little bit at a curve, which is a little different than anything else I have. I'll be using the thanks on my next card. I thought I'd do another with stamping over the alcohol ink background, but this time with a different background stamp since I use that other one so often. This is from Pink and Main. There are actually 3 stamps that you can use together to create a colorful plaid look, or you can use them and buy them separately. I'll be using one of these on today's card. So I have one of my alcohol ink backgrounds, and I'm inking up my stamp with an archival ink once again. Now I'm inking up my stamp, stamping that. Once again, this will be wet for a bit. I'm going to use my dry cloth to dab away the ink from the alcohol inked areas only. Notice that I'm not dabbing against the white background because it'll mess up that white ink, and I want it to stay true to color. I know folks are going to ask if any other inks would work for this besides archival. You can really try it out if you want. Someone said they did it with Hero Arts inks, but I found that I get the greatest success from the properties of the Ranger archival ink. It's also a great ink for stamping on slick surfaces such as this Yupo paper. Okay, notice I made this card upside down. Did you see that? I put it down upside down. I'm going to fix that later. Let's just look at the completed card. I used that Birch Press Honey Script Thanks die that I showed you before, and I did that from gold cardstock. Then I stamped underneath that with You Are the Best from the memory box stamp set that I just showed you. I also have 2 different die cuts under there, one from the Matinee Rectangle die set and one from the Concord and 9th stitched die set that I'm going to show you a little bit later. So you can layer together different stitched dies from different die sets and create this fun kind of layered label look. Don't be afraid to mix companies. The looks can be beautiful. All right, my next examples show cutting a portion of your alcohol ink background out or die cutting from the background itself. In this case, I use the Birch Press Floral Star Layering dies. If you've watched my videos, I really like layering dies because you can easily get a beautiful look on a card that you just can't achieve any other way. Well, I die cut them from white cardstock and I cut them down the center so I could make a gap in the middle where I put my alcohol ink background. All of this is cut from simple white cardstock. I then glued the layers together. You could use a liquid adhesive for this or put stick-it adhesive on the back of your cardstock before you die cut it. But instead, I decided to use a spray adhesive, which is E6000. I just found that was fastest for this particular layering die set. Okay, so now I have my background and I'm going to pick an area from my background that I wanted to cut out. I wasn't thrilled with this background because there wasn't a whole lot of interest to it, so I'm just going to cut out the area that I liked best. I will save the other pieces for scrap cards in the future. So this is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card, and I glued my alcohol ink background strip on a white mat right at the center of the card. I now am gluing the little die cut layered pieces above and below this. So the alcohol ink piece is popped up so that I can easily slide and tuck these behind it. So it just gives a different look to that floral star layering die. I then added a simple thanks sentiment to the center. This is Simon Says Stamp CZ Design Thanks die. I die cut the shadow thanks from white cardstock and the thanks die itself from gold cardstock. I highly recommend using a gold or silver cardstock to match the alloy in your background. It really makes it stand out more. If you do not have a gold or silver cardstock, you could instead cover regular white cardstock with Versamark ink. Add a gold or silver embossing powder and heat set it, then die cut, and it gives you a very similar look. Okay, here's another example where I took an alcohol ink background, picked my favorite area, and then die cut from that. This time I used the ink to paper Risen die set. This has a great cross die in it that was perfect for cutting out the section of this background that I liked the most. I can save the rest for another card. I'm using the Memory Box Serene Mandala 3D embossing folder. This is an amazing embossing folder with lots of detail. And I have a piece of Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock. I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine, but you could use whatever die cut machine you may have. Each machine will be a little different as to what sandwich you use, and for this one I found I didn't need to use any of the cutting plates to make this thick embossing folder work. So there you can see the beautiful pattern we have on our background now. Next I have the ink to paper He Has Risen die. I thought this was the perfect sentiment for this card. I die cut that from white and added it onto our alcohol ink cross. Now I ended up changing my background. Before I had a fog cardstock, but I wanted some shimmer to it. So instead I used the embossing folder with the Cardabella shimmer cardstock. This is like a champagne color that's really beautiful for a backdrop. And I felt the shimmer in this was nice with the metallic alloy that we have on our cross. I also added some gold baubles from Trinity stamps. So really there's not much to assembling this card, but thanks to the fun die cuts and embossing folder I used, it looks like a very complicated card. But this shows that you can die cut your alcohol ink backgrounds to get a pop of color just where you want it. Okay, my next example shows that you can use debossing cover dies to make kind of like a pierced pattern across your alcohol ink background. There are many different piercing or debossing cover dies, but today I'm using from Concord and Ninth the Stitched Blooms die set. So this is the stamp set that the die set coordinates with. You can see all the other dies included, but I'm just using this stitched pattern piece. It doesn't die cut anything, it just makes that faux stitching detail onto your paper or, in this example, an alcohol ink background. So I'm going to take that die and tape it towards the top center of my alcohol ink background. I will then run it through my die cut machine as I would if it were a regular die. Any die cut machine can do this. After I've done it on the top half of the background, I'll go ahead and move the die to the bottom half of the background and run it through on that too. So then we will have this entire piece covered with that detailed pattern. I wanted to create a fun frame for this piece, so I'm using the Memory Box Matinee Rectangle Layer die set. I actually used one of the smaller dies for a label in an earlier card in this video, but this time I'm going to use two of the larger dies. This die is great for creating something a little different than a plain rectangle. It steps it up a bit. So I taped the two larger dies together, ran it through my die cut machine with white cardstock, and there we have a fun detailed frame. I glued the frame onto my alcohol ink background and trimmed the excess away and added it onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. Now in the center there, I used one of the smaller Matinee rectangle dies to create a label, and I stamped "You Make the World a Better Place," and that's from the Memory Box stamp set that I showed you earlier. I also added a little silver glitter heart that I found in my stash, just for some added interest. So you can see that fun detail pattern in our alcohol ink background, and I also used that die on the matching envelope so we would have a perfect match. Here's another example where I used the same Concord and Ninth die to add the detail to our alcohol ink background. I also added a Hugs Honey script die with silver glitter cardstock on top for the sentiment. Very simple. On the background, I used that Pink and Main background stamp from before with blue ink on a blue note card. And then I finished it off with some Trinity Stamps silver baubles. So these two examples show that if you have any kind of debossing die or faux stitching die, you can use that with your alcohol ink Yupo backgrounds to add a little bit of interest and to step it up a bit. You can also see how silver glitter cardstock really pulls out the silver metallic alloy in the background. Okay, next I wanted to show you that you can stamp with a bold black image right on top of your alcohol ink background instead of taking the time to color that image. It's just a fun, different, and easy look. Now I'm stamping on this with an Altenew Paint a Flower Poppy stamp set. This poppy is beautiful. I first tried to stamp it with my StazOn black ink, but my StazOn ink was dry and I couldn't find the reinker, so I decided to try something else instead. I could have used the Ranger Archival ink, but this worked out really well. I used my anti-static powder tool, and I'm stamping with black pigment ink. This is Altenew Obsidian Black. And then once I've stamped it, I'm going to add clear embossing powder and heat set it. This will hold that black ink under the embossing powder, so it'll stay nice and black and crisp on top of our alcohol ink background. I find that when I use heavyweight Yupo, I don't have problems with warping when I add heat. You just want to keep the heat moving around on it, not centered in one spot too much to prevent that warping. I also added the Thinking of You sentiment and then used the Memory Box Matinee rectangle die to die cut the background for that fun added edge. I put that onto a peach colored note card where I had stamped the Simon Says stamp You Are Background stamp, just to add a little more interest to a very simple card. You can really see all the alloy in the back of this. I used quite a bit on this particular background, and it goes really nicely with that simple bold stamp on top. You can also use alcohol ink backgrounds as a backdrop for other stamped images. Now, honestly, I don't usually do this because I find it very busy, but I was able to with this example using the ink to paper Risen stamp set. There are layers you can put together to make a cross, and it actually leaves an open area in the centers to stamp a sentiment. And I will actually add a sentiment strip on top instead. So let me show you what I did. I used the first layer of the cross. This is so beautiful how this comes together. I stamped this with Altenew Crisp dye ink. You could use any dye inks you have, but I am stamping this with Firefly Green. After I've stamped this layer, I'll go ahead and add the second layer image. It lines up very easily. And this one I will stamp with the Sea Breeze ink from Altenew. I then will use the coordinating die to cut this out. Remember the die that I used on the He Is Risen card earlier? That was like a regular squared cross. Those two dies are in a set together. I decided to add some detail to these flowers and leaves by using a darker color Copic that's just a bit darker than the ink that I used. Notice I'm just doing little scribbles, nothing like really outstanding here, not really following any of the lines, just adding scribbles, and it's amazing how even that makes this simple layered image pop. I did that to the blue flowers and the green leaves, and then I gold heat embossed the word rejoice and added it to the center. My alcohol ink background is matted on a piece of gold cardstock, which helps to bring out the gold in the background. The cross is glued right to the center. Now, normally, as I mentioned, I don't put stamped images on top of my alcohol ink background because I feel like it's just a little too much. But in this case, I felt like the background was smooth enough that I could add something in the center without being too overwhelming. Okay, I'm saving for last my favorite card, and the one that I plan to go back and make more of this week. You can create any alcohol ink backgrounds, and it would work for this design. So what I did is I've got my pink background with lots of gold on it, and I matted that with gold cardstock. I then have a love die cut on there, and then a gold heat embossed little sentiment on top. And then I added some of those Trinity Stamps gold baubles. Now the love die cut is from My Favorite Things. I die cut it twice from white cardstock and once from gold cardstock and layered them together. The little From Me to You is from the Birch Press stamp set here that I've used several times throughout this video. I just gold heat embossed it on white cardstock and added it on top of my large word die cut. So this is a very simple design. You could use any large word die cut, put it on top of any alcohol ink background. You can even incorporate some of the techniques that I've shown you throughout this video. But this is one that you can mass produce and make to give to people during this difficult time. I had mentioned in my last video the idea of using our superpower of card making to help others. It's time for us to get to work and send out lots of these cards. I sent a bunch today and I plan to send more tomorrow, and I hope you join me. All right, so there is a fun way to use the alcohol ink alloys along with lots of card designs. I really appreciate the time that you're spending with me, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. If you're interested, the supplies I used today are linked in the YouTube description below, and I have a couple other videos linked here in the middle that I think you might like. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you soon, and have a wonderful week.